Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here, and welcome back to another Elder Scrolls investigation. Today, we'll be exploring what is definitely one of Skyrim's most well-known and talked about mysteries. That being the question, or questions, of what was going on at the Bromgennar Sanctuary, and what did the Thalmor know? Okay, so if you're unfamiliar with what the Bromgennar Sanctuary is, or any of what I'm talking about, don't fret. In a moment, we'll go over a pretty in-depth summary that should explain it all well enough for even non-Elder Scrolls players to easily understand. But for right now, let's just say that there's this tiny, unmarked Nord ruin that the player can visit in Skyrim that allows us to time travel, kind of, and clearly harbors a strange, ancient dragon-esque magical power that we're still trying to understand. And apparently, that the Thalmor were trying to secure for themselves. Chances are, if you're a longtime fan of the channel, you already know what I'm talking about, as we've mentioned this place and its associated curiosities before in previous videos. However, we've never quite had the time to go over everything and assess all the moving parts and implications of this subject. And recently, some commenters have pointed out some very interesting developments related to this mystery that Bethesda's made in the Elder Scrolls Online, that thicken the plot even more, which we haven't discussed. Thus, today, we are finally going to tackle this topic with all of the attention it deserves. We'll start off by going over an introduction to the mystery at hand, where I'll point out some very important details, and then we'll break off into some of the clues the writers have left, as well as some interesting information in the game files. Finally, we'll analyze some big related things revealed not too long ago in ESO. By the time all is said and done, we will have unraveled a surprisingly twisted hidden narrative that has some major implications for the future of this universe. And while, admittedly, I can't say everything will be 100% solved and confirmed, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of what the writers were suggesting, and mostly figured it all out. Anyway, without any further ado, let's do further and explore Skyrim's oddest, unmarked location. Alrighty, beginning with the introduction. Hopefully this will serve to jolt any fuzzy memories and make sure we're all on the same page. I remember when I first had this whole concept explained to me, I was very confused, so we'll be as thorough as possible. Anyway, in Skyrim, nestled within a mountain range that lies on the border between the holds of Hjalmarch and Whiterun, is an abandoned, ancient Nord city called Bromgennar, though our map refers to it as the Labyrinthian, for reasons we'll explain in a bit. Now, despite playing no role in the game's main questline, this location is very impressive. It's easily the largest ruin of its kind, boasting dozens of structures and its own set of walls. Heck, it's bigger than the nearby, inhabited town of Morthal. Not to mention the views we can get here are unparalleled. The reason Bromgennar is so big, according to various in-game books, is that it used to be the very capital of Skyrim itself. Well, maybe. Kind of. You know what? Pause. Lore time. So long ago, and I mean long ago, like thousands or maybe even tens of thousands of years in the past, the Nords of Skyrim were ruled not by a human king or emperor, but instead by dragons. Yes, these winged beasts once had domain over this region's people. And in fact, Alduin, the main antagonist of the Elder Scrolls V, was the leader of Aldovas back then. While these creatures certainly enjoyed the power they had, they weren't really all that interested in actually running the society they controlled. They didn't want to waste their time collecting taxes and creating laws or settling disputes between citizens. No. That was beneath them. So, the dragons picked out a tiny group of the most loyal, dedicated men they could find, people they trusted would never betray them, and put them in charge of managing everyone else. These hand-picked Nords would become known as dragon priests, and they were effectively free to rule the realm however they pleased, so long as their winged bosses were happy with their performance. Anyway, we call this organization of dragons and their collaborating human priests the Dragon Cult. And here, this place, Bromgennar, was its capital. Of course, this wouldn't last forever, as roughly 4,000 years ago, the dragon cult was destroyed by its revolting subjects. I guess the humans finally got sick of being told what to do by creatures that didn't even have opposable thumbs. And by 139 of the First Era, most dragons and their priests were dead. Bromgennar was abandoned, and the victorious Nords founded the new Kingdom of Skyrim, which exists in some capacity to this very day. Though, rumor has it that not every dragon priest died, and it's said some secretly evaded death all this time thanks to their own magical power and harvested souls of the innocent. But those are just rumors. Okay, well, lore time over. Point is, this place, Bromgennar, was once the province's most important metropolis. And with a backstory like that, you better believe it's harboring some secrets. At the center of the city is a tiny building which doesn't look super remarkable from a distance. But inside, you'll find an odd scene. A skeleton lies next to a wooden mask, slumped against some sort of altar with busts on it. What happened here? A treasure hunt gone wrong? Perhaps a bandit attack? Well, also on the floor here is a note, titled, Hired Thug's Missive. And, well, I'll just read it to you. Quote, "It seemed like an easy enough job. Graz and me done plenty like it before. Some chinless Breton wants bodyguards for a trip into the mountains. Fine, easy clink for us." He goes on about this twice-forsaken mask of his the whole way, of course. Got a pretty good laugh when Graz snatched it and put it on her face. He threatened to fire us for that one. Not smart out here on your own. He realized that fast and shut up about not paying. So, we get here. He thumbs through some papers and mutters to himself. Never mind that me and Graz had to cut through 10 stinking trolls to get him here, and without so much as a warning. Poof! He puts the mask on, and vanished. Could have put my hands on his throat one moment, the next he's not so much as thin air. Well, after a while we didn't know what to do, and Graz picks up her gear to head home, when he poops back, that mask in his hand. Begs us not to leave, says he needs us to wait, this is what he's paying us for. Then he puts the mask back on his sorry face, and he's gone again. I'd seen cloaks do invisibility before, but a few swings of my fist proved he wasn't pulling that one. Nothing there to hit. He shows up again, tells us he needs more time, has to figure something about other masks, and vanishes again. That was yesterday. And I'm done twiddling with my thumbs and writing letters to myself. We are leaving come sunrise. And if he shows up again, I promise Azura I'm putting this dagger through his chest to keep him in one place. We'll pull more loot off him dead than he could have paid alive. But not that mask. That cursed thing can stay and rot with him and the trolls right here. End quote. Ah, so this kind of explains it. The author of our letter was a guard, hired to help some shady Breton and his mask make the journey here, to this very building we're standing in. When they arrived, the Breton put on the mask and disappeared, which greatly angered said guard, so much so that he murdered the Breton to death when he came back. Jeez, talk about poor customer service. Hope he got a bad Yelp review. Anyway, that wooden mask is still here, and when we put it on, we'll immediately be teleported to an alternate version of this room that appears new and less run down. It almost feels like we've gone back in time to when Bromgennar was still populated. This is where the Breton must have disappeared to. Sadly, we can't leave the room and explore the past like Marty McFly or anything. You're stuck here, and the only way out is to just take the mask off. We can, however, interact with that altar though. Now, okay, before we go any further, let's pause right here and take another minute to point something out and explain a very important concept. This wooden mask, that may or may not have just given us DeLorean powers, is obviously a dragon priest mask. We've already explained who the dragon priests were. They were the humans that governed in the Dova's name long ago. No need to repeat that. But something I didn't mention was that the dragons gave every single one of their priests a unique, customized mask in exchange for their service that symbolized their status, which honestly is sort of sweet. This is one of those. Every mask had a one-of-a-kind enchantment that granted the wearer some type of power. Importantly, priests would name their masks after themselves. So, hypothetically, say my name is Bob, I would name my mask Bob too. Can you tell where I'm going with this? In vanilla Elder Scrolls V, there are a total of 8 named living dragon priests still alive, scattered across the world. Some are in certain tombs, others will meet along the way in certain quests. And every one of those 8 will drop their own special mask after they've been slain in battle by the Dragonborn, with their name attached. For example, the priest Croesus will always hang out around Shearpoint Hollow, and when you defeat him, you can loot his mask, Croesus, from his inventory. Its enchantment offers a 20% bonus to lockpicking, archery, and alchemy when equipped. Defeat Otar the Mad, and get his mask, Otar, which grants the wearer 30% resistance to fire, frost, and/or shock magic. You get the idea. This wooden mask is special though, because while it clearly has a unique enchantment, time travel, it doesn't have a dragon priest name. It's just known as the Wooden Mask. Why is that? Well, this is one of our many million-dollar questions, and we'll get back to it in just a second. For now, let's just continue talking about what we can do while we're in this wacky time travel dimension. Frankly, the only thing here that matters, as I alluded to earlier, is that altar. Because in this version of the building, we can interact with it, and the shrine will demand that we place any dragon priest masks we have in our inventory on it. With the exception of that wooden one. We don't need to give it that one. Just any of the 8 we could loot off of the game's vanilla dragon priests. If you do have all 8, if you've killed all 8 priests and taken all of their helmets and placed them on the shrine, a mechanism will trigger, and the altar will reward the player by giving you a brand new 9th, or I guess 10th if we're counting the wooden one, dragon priest mask. This bad boy is called Konahrik, and it boasts an especially menacing appearance, sporting a unique color scheme, a unique shape, and tusks. Furthermore, more importantly, it arguably offers the best enchantment of all, allowing the wearer to receive a massive HP boost whenever your health bar falls below 15%. Once you've picked it up, simply take off the wooden mask, and now you'll have Konahrik in the real world, ready for use. Now, okay, this is a great reward, and none of what we've done to earn it is tied to any quests at all. Well, I mean, certain Dragon Priest masks can only be encountered in certain quests, so to get all 8 we do need to finish quite a few missions, but there are no specific quests telling us to go here, nor are there any objective markers. This entire secret time travel room and the Konahrik and wooden masks are all things that we can only find on our own, or with the help of one of these videos. The big question here, though, is which dragon priest did the Konahrik mask belong to? Remember, every mask was named after its owner, and in the same vein, again, who did the wooden mask belong to? Complicating matters even further, as I suggested at the beginning of this video, the Thalmor seem to have had some idea of the Konahrik and/or wooden masks, and have been pursuing them in a limited capacity. Probably. You see, in the Rift, there's a large ancient Nord ruin called Forelhost, sitting high in some mountains. When the player arrives there, we'll find a high elven man named Captain Valmir sitting outside alone by a fire. Valmir will be posing as a captain of whichever Civil War faction the player has chosen to side with. If you have yet to pick a side in the Civil War, he'll simply base his faction off of whether or not the player sided with Hadvar the Imperial or Ralof the Stormcloak when escaping Helgen. Valmir will inform the player that in order to further the Civil War cause, he needs you to run inside Forelhost, kill the dragon priest inside, named Ragat, and bring its mask back to him. Once you've done so, he promises you some coin and a promotion in whichever army you're a part of. Now, clearly this gentleman is being very deceptive. He's not a captain at all, but instead, a secret Thalmor operative. And once you've gone through the dungeon, gotten the mask, and have come back out, you'll find that he's already talking to another soldier, feeding them the same lie, asking that they do the same thing. When he realizes that you've caught him red-handed, he'll turn hostile and attack. On Valmir's body is a letter titled Orders. It reads as follows. Quote, "You will proceed to the ruins of Ferelhost to retrieve the mask from the dragon cult there. If you are discovered, impersonate an officer. It is unlikely that anyone from Skyrim will be clever enough to see through the disguise. Once you have obtained the mask, bring it back to the Labyrinthian." End quote. Aha! So the Aldmeri Dominion seems to have at least known something about the Bromgennar Sanctuary. They seem to have at least known that they needed to bring Dragon Priest masks there, though it's unclear exactly how in-depth their knowledge was. Furthermore, many have argued that perhaps that dead Breton who brought the wooden mask to the sanctuary was also working on behalf of the Thalmor. Though, personally, I think that's unlikely. Remember, the Breton hired 2 random private mercenaries. There's no way the Thalmor would have trusted 2 goons to escort one of their agents. They would have sent some of their own men. So that guy was probably acting on his own too. Either way though, what could the Dominion have known about this mask, and what were their plans to do with it? How could it have helped further their cause? All it does for us is restore health whenever it gets low. I don't see why they would have placed such a tremendous value on it. Well, Konahrik does have another power. You see, according to the mask's description, when Konahrik is worn, if our health gets low, it has the chance to heal the wearer and damage nearby enemies. That's it. Doesn't seem very useful. However, what the mask's description doesn't tell us is that when our health falls below 15%, aside from just getting healed, there's a 3% chance it might summon a quote-unquote spectral dragon priest to the battlefield to aid the player for 60 seconds. It's not anything tremendous, but Konahrik obviously has the power to summon dragon priests to the mortal realm, or at least summon their spectral shades. Sure, we can only do it for 60 seconds, but maybe that's just a gameplay limitation. Maybe it's possible to summon more than just one for a very, very long time, and the Thalmor could have used that to their advantage. As for how the elves could have known about Konahrik, well, that inquiry is a little bit more difficult to answer, because the events of the Elder Scrolls V very strongly emphasize that the Dominion doesn't know much about the dragons or the dragon cults at all. In fact, during the mission Diplomatic Immunity, when the player is sent to infiltrate a Thalmor embassy, we can read through numerous internal reports by the organization, and in them they admit to not really understanding why the dragons are back, and being just as clueless as everybody else. So, who knows how they could have learned about this? Another very unique quality about Konahrik that I haven't brought up yet is that unlike all the other Dragon Priest masks, we don't know what it's made out of. You see, in the case of the other 8, or maybe 9 masks, we can tell what material they were made of based off of which one of our smithing perks they interact with, and what materials are needed to temper them. So, for example, Nakarin is made out of ebony, Otar is made out of bronze, Morokai's mask is made of moonstone. But Konahrik is a little bit weird. It interacts with our Daedric smithing perk, which is really ominous, yet we temper it with golden ingots, which is really weird, because Konahrik is the only piece of armor, or real armor in the entire game, that golden ingots can be used to temper. Their only other purpose is to be sold or used in pieces of jewelry, like rings, necklaces, and circlets. Furthermore, Konahrik's armor rating is shockingly high. It's the highest of any mask, at a whopping 24 points. You see where I'm going with this. Gold shouldn't be that strong no matter what. Now, the good news is, there is another way we can tell what the Dragon Priest masks were made out of. By looking at their editor IDs, accessible in Skyrim's creation kit or through console commands. This literally will just give away their base material. For example, the editor ID for Morokai's mask is, quote, Armor Dragon Priest Mask Moonstone Helmet 01, So there you go, right there. You can tell Morokai's helmet is made out of moonstone. The editor ID for Otar's helmet is Armor Dragon Priest Mask Bronze Helmet 01. That one's bronze. However, Konahrik is weird. Its editor ID is simply Armor Dragon Priest Mask Ultra Helmet 01. It doesn't tell us what it's made out of. This is the only one that behaves that way. So, it seems Bethesda did this on purpose. Ugh, this is a lot. Let's take a step back and consolidate our info. We know that the Thalmor were interested in Konahrik. We suspect that whatever organization the Breton was from was also interested. We know the Dragon Cult thought the mask was so special, it shouldn't have been accessed without the consent of their 8 Skyrim members. And now we know the devs are intentionally trying to hide whatever material was used to forge the Tusky thing, though it may have been gold or Daedric related. This isn't anywhere close enough to identify who exactly Konahrik belonged to, but we can start to consider potential candidates. So let's do that, and then we'll move into what ESO has to say. Miraak feels like an almost perfect fit. The current champion of Hermaeus Mora and primary antagonist of the Dragonborn DLC. This man was the first ever Dragonborn, the first human born with the soul of Adova, and he was a dragon priest for much of his life. You probably know the story from here. Sometime in the Merethic era, he eventually got so power-hungry after his ego and the Daedric god Hermaeus Mora got to him, that he attempted to overthrow the dragons and take over the world for himself, but was defeated in a very close fight. He was just about to be killed in battle when Mora intervened to pluck him out of the mortal realm and moved Miraak to his plane of oblivion, where the man's been ever since. Konahrik could have been Miraak's old mask that the Dragon Cult somehow secured after his defeat. Knowing how strong he was, the organization could have decided that no one was to access this piece of apparel unless the group decided unanimously. This would also serve to explain Konahrik's Daedric ties, and its name, Warlord. Its ability to rapidly boost the wearer's HP whenever it gets too low could even go so far as to allude to the last-minute escape that was made by Miraak. All in all, this guy's a very, very strong candidate. At the same time, though, we have some pretty good reasons to doubt Miraak's connection to the Tusked Helm. Like, the guy already had his own mask with way different features. Miraak's current mask has tentacle motifs. Its enchantment increases your magicka by 40 to 70 points, and has nothing to do with healing. Did he just make a totally new mask that was nothing like his original while in Apocrypha? Or is this just a distorted one of the same one he's worn all along? At the opposite end of the spectrum, Veilok the Jailer offers a compelling case of his own. He is the dragon priest that personally defeated Miraak in single combat during his whole revolt, and Veilok is largely credited by Skull historians for saving the world from tentacled tyranny. We can come across this priest's tomb on the island of Solstheim in DLC 4. He's very hostile to the player, so keep your distance. However, you'll notice that he's the only Dragon Lord in the game that isn't wearing a mask. That has to be a huge clue, right? There's a single mask in the world named Konahrik that we can find without a Dragon Priest owner, and Veilok just so happens to be the only Dragon Priest missing his mask. Since he was the man who led the fight against Miraak and ultimately saved the day, he would have held a high rank in society, if not the highest rank, and a helm that translates to Warlord would have been a good match. But if the tusked item was Veilok's, why wasn't he buried with it like everyone else? Why did the Order choose to secure it in this way? A sign of respect? Were they afraid of its power? Finally, if you're willing to put on a tinfoil hat, and I promise last one, then we'll talk about what ESO reveals, Ysgramor is another possibility. Hear me out. I tell the story of Ysgramor like twice a month at least, but just in case you're unacquainted, Nords aren't true natives to Tamriel. Their original homeland is a mysterious landmass north of the continent called Atmora. Tens of thousands of years ago, these Nords started sailing down and arriving on the shores of Skyrim from there. Now, at this same point in time, a race of elves called the Snow Elves were already here. But for a while, the two peoples just coexisted fine. Long story short, peace was not meant to last, and a war broke out between the men and Myr. And this dude named Ysgramor came from Atmora to Skyrim with 500 of the best warriors he could find, and he and his men, or companions, quickly drove the Snow Elves to extinction in a brutal military campaign, and claimed this province in the name of the Nords. Today, he's honored as one of the greatest men to have ever lived, and a model for all positive virtues. And Ysgramor was totally working with the dragon cult, even if everybody forgot or pretends he didn't. Cause Atmora, at the time period in which he was coming from it, was already ruled by the dragon cult. And when Ysgramor arrived, following his conquests and everything, he never declared himself king. In fact, he seems to have just let the dragon cult start to take over, almost as if he was cool with that. We know for a fact that by the time Ysgramor passed away, the DC was in full control of the region. So it seems fair to say that the man was probably working with them. If you want more evidence, the tomb of Ysgramor's son, Yingle, contains a lot of dragon-esque memorabilia. There are dragon cult motifs on the walls, dragon claws laying all over the place. And when you finally do face Yingle himself, well, normally he'll appear as a spectral skeleton. If the player's a high enough rank, he'll be a spectral dragon priest instead. Yingle's the only character that this happens with, by the way. The only other spectral dragon priest in the game is the one we can summon with the mask. So if Ysgramor wasn't a dragon priest, or didn't worship the dragons, his son definitely did. Oh, yeah, and there are a couple of dragon priest daggers in Ysgramor's own personal tomb. Though there aren't the same dragon priest motifs all over the place. Those are replaced with icons of Kine and Shor and the Nordic totem gods. Could Konahrik have been Ysgramor's own mask, and the cult is simply preserving it due to its historical significance? Ysgramor was definitely a warlord, so there's that. Oh well, whether or not you found any of those three candidates particularly plausible is up to you. But now let's jump into what the Elder Scrolls Online reveals, because there is some pretty big info here. Starting with something small, literally, in the Elder Scrolls Online, when the player is looting various containers, it's possible random named treasure items will appear in there for you to loot. Oftentimes these items have a little bit of significance in relation to the universe's lore, or funny descriptions. One item we can randomly get when looting containers is called the Depleted Bromgennar Stone. Its description reads, quote, "Once capable of returning its bearer to the ancient capital of Skyrim, it's now only good for pointing toward the Labyrinthian." End quote. It sells for 250 gold, and you can't do anything with it. But hey, apparently the dragon cult had access to rocks that would teleport them back to their capital. Could there have been a connection with the wooden mask? That helmet allows us to travel in time, and these rocks apparently would have let us travel in space. Likewise, another treasure item potentially related to the mask too is Eldergleam Amber. Just like the Bromgennar Stone, we can find this randomly in chests and containers anywhere. It sells for 1500 gold, and its description reads, quote, "A gleaming golden amber that sings a faint and soothing melody. It could have only come from the ancient tree, Eldergleam." The Eldergleam tree is one of the oldest living organisms in all of Tamriel. While in the present day it's a proud standing structure, priests tell us that it was just a baby sapling tens of thousands of years ago when man was first arriving in Skyrim. This thing is ancient, and it's said to have strong divine connections. Just like the Eldergleam's amber plays a melody, the wooden mask's description says it quote-unquote hums with an unfamiliar energy. Maybe the wooden mask was carved out of the Eldergleam, and that could help to explain its DeLorean-esque capabilities. Never mind wooden masks or tree sap, though. The real big thing ESO does, or did, relevant to our discussion, was introduce an item called the Mask of Alcoho. The Mask of Alcoho is a unique helmet, which has a suspiciously dragon priest-like appearance. It's a dragon priest mask that we can encounter in Elsewhere, of all places. Alcoho is simply the Khajiit variant for Akatosh, the dragon god of time, just in case it wasn't obvious enough. We and some furry Dragon Guard members will use this helmet to subdue an ancient, recently awoken Dova during the Dragonhold storyline. And, just like Konahrik, this thing is super powerful. Essentially, it allows non-Dovahkiins to tap into the abilities of certain shouts, and the mere function of it seems to terrify the dragons we're trying to defeat. Interestingly, the item requires a friendly dragon or Dragonborn to be nearby in order to be fully functional. That could suggest that perhaps all dragon masks require similar Dova connections, and the only reason we got to use them so seamlessly in Skyrim was because of our pre-existing Dragonborn nature. Now, comparing the color schemes of the Alkosh helm and Konahrik, I'm showing you a picture of the vanilla Konahrik mask, by the way, right now. Most of the video I'd actually been coloring it in with a retexture, but if you look at the vanilla colors, these two items seem pretty similar. Maybe they're made out of the same mysterious substance that Bethesda was purposely hiding. It's a mystery how exactly the Khajiits here obtained the mask. They're huge worshippers of Akatosh, or Alkosh in the first place, and they even call themselves the Pride of Alkosh. So it's very possible they'd have the know-how to find it in a ruin or slay a priest for it. Although, some of the cats refer to the mask as a direct gift from Akatosh, something he made for them specifically so they could kill evil dragons easier. If that's true, it could also be the origin story for our Tusky Skyrim mask. What if the reason we were never supposed to find out what Konahrik was made out of was because Akatosh himself personally designed it and gave it to the priests as a sort of super weapon? Now, the Nords of the Dragon Cult back in this day actually believed Akatosh and Alduin were the same thing, so really it would have been Alduin who made it for them, but you get the idea. Likewise, given that Alkosh's mask can be used quite easily to fell dragons, it's no wonder the Dragon Order had such a strict security mechanism in place in Skyrim. If Konahrik is anywhere near as deadly, letting it fall into the wrong hands would have proven catastrophic. Here's what I think. I believe Konahrik was created by Alduin, or perhaps some other high-ranking powerful Dova, during Mirak's attempted uprising, and that dragon gave the mask to Velok in the hopes he'd be able to stop Mirak. After Velok's efforts proved successful and he passed away, the remaining members of the faction decided that his helm was just far too powerful to be let buried in any random tomb, so they moved it to their capital and locked it under this security mechanism, so only they could use it, in the event the Order unanimously agreed to do so. Somewhere along the line, rumors spread, and thousands of years later, the Aldmeri Dominion figured out some sort of ancient power was sealed here at Bromgennar, that they likely weren't totally understanding of, but still eager to claim. In my opinion, this is the most likely order of events. The fact that Velok doesn't have a Dragon Priest mask is just way too big of a fact for me to overlook in this context. There's no way Bethesda didn't mean something by that. They did that on purpose. And I think they were insinuating he was the old holder of Konahrik. But that's just a theory. A game that's copyrighted. Anyway, thank you so much for stopping by, everybody. After well over 30 minutes and with my thesis finally complete enough, I think this is an appropriate point to wrap up. What do you guys think was going on here? Do you believe Konahrik belonged to Velok the Jailer? Or do you think somebody else held on to it? What do you think about the Mask of Alkosh? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated. Again, thanks for watching, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.